Hey everybody, Brett here, the lead artist at Studio HipSword, and this is the third devlog for our work in progress, very first video game, HipWitch. Now, it's been a hot second and some change since we last spoke, for we've had all hands on deck working on some big new major developments, both of which I will go over in today's video. Development number one being that our team has expanded by 3 entire human beings, so that's pretty cool. And development number 2 is that we've just finished our second internal demo of HipWitch. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the creative process and any interesting insights we had along the way, so without further ado, let's do it. So, the team expansion. I am very happy to welcome RJ, Sasha, and Jensen to our art team. That's right, the term lead artist is no longer a ridiculous sham, but an actual descriptor of what I do now. They're all amazing artists, by the way. I would check out their social medias if I were you. And while not all of them are exactly local, I mean, 2 of them I had met personally prior to working on this game together, they are all from New Zealand, as is most of the rest of the team, which is it's just nice for me. There's a sense of camaraderie in building a game out of a slightly unlikely place. And it means a lot that they would even reach out to us in the first place. I mean, this is not a AAA game, this is a complete passion project. Studio HipSword was founded by a couple of friends who just wanted to make good on the innocent dreams they had as teenagers. And we've been manifesting the beginning of that dream out of nothing but our own hope and dedication. The idea that what we're doing is attracting people to want to add their powers to ours and help make our dream a reality is so awesome. It's a very "and my axe" kind of vibe. I love it. But our new art team has given us more than just new friendships and the ability to wax poetic. It's also an art team. We can do like 4 times as much art as we could before. Which is great, because there is so much to do when you're making a game. There's characters, environments, objects, buildings, collectibles, UI, promotional artwork, character designs, and animations. It's insane! So being able to spread those tasks across 4 different artists definitely makes the entire workload feel a bit lighter. And it also means each task can be approached with a little bit more inspiration and artistic touch, simply because there's more human being to go around. On the flip side, as Uncle Ben always said, with great power comes great management. Coordinating 3 new people who have just joined the project is pretty tricky. I mean, even just on a basic level, getting them up to speed with the project was difficult because our internal documentation and organization was pretty bad. It's like agreeing to having fancy company over, and then realizing you've got to shove all your Google Drive folders underneath the bed. We've revamped our goals. We wrote design documents and art style guides. We made a million more Discord channels. But the hardest part was figuring out the workflow. Who was working on what, when were they working on it, how were they submitting it for feedback from the other artists, and this stuff is especially hard when each of us operate under fairly different schedules. There's also the fact that RJ is actually working for us as an intern as part of his study, so there's certain tasks that we have to give to him to make sure he's getting that proper work experience. We're still working out kinks in our process, but things are starting to get a bit more cohesive. We're settling more into roles, and there are fewer confusing copies of files on the Google Drive! And that's been very rewarding. I'm very much enjoying this collaboration, and it's really promising if how Demo 2 turned out is anything to go off of. Which brings me to the second development of this video, the demo. So Demo 2 is what you've been watching this entire video so far, and here's why it's a milestone. Our development timeline is split into 3 phases: the iteration phase, the polish phase, and the launch phase. The iteration phase is for trying a bunch of ideas out, iterating on them, unearthing the identity of the game, and setting the hard parameters, like what are the main mechanics, what's the story outline, what quests are we going to make, etc. The polishing phase is for executing the plan, following through on all the creative decisions we made during iteration. In other words, making the actual content of the dang game. The launch phase is for putting the finishing touches on our project and then releasing it out to the world. So creating proof of concept demos during the iteration phase is pretty crucial, because it provides a tangible way to know if our ideas are good or viable to produce before we've committed them to the polishing phase. So, what's new in Demo 2? How have we iterated on the demo we showed you in the first devlog? Well, the core gameplay, atmosphere, and structure actually haven't changed a whole lot. There's no need to reinvent a wheel that you like already. But what Demo 2 is honed. Take for instance the most dramatic change, the visuals. The amount of lovingly rendered scenery in this game has skyrocketed. Our map designer is therefore able to create far more rich and distinct environments that invoke a sense of place. Which is important because we want the players to be engrossed in a chilled out way, just taking in the beauty of walking around the park. The protagonist redesign we talked about in Vlog 2 is now up and running. Literally, oh my god, it looks way more like a video game now that there's running in it. Yes! But Prom isn't the only new character design in the game. We've got a few new faces in here, and Sasha has redesigned some of our earlier NPCs to better match their current characterizations. Which brings me to the writing. It hits all the same beats and carries a lot of the same quirky, humorous energy, but we want it to be less improvisational and more considered. Who are these characters? What's happening inside their heads? And what themes is this story of ours ambling towards? If we can plant the seeds of a few emotional payoffs later down the road, that would be fantastic. Before I move on to gameplay changes, I want to quickly mention that we now have a final version of the basic exploration music. And you've been listening to it this entire time. It is a gorgeous track that adds so much charm to the game, and I would really recommend checking out Yogev's personal audio vlogs to get an insight into the creative process for it. So, gameplay. One of the biggest changes we made to HipWitch during this time was overhauling the dialogue system. And it's completely under the hood and you will never ever notice. The previous way we were handling dialogue internally was just a bit unwieldy. We had to write way too much dialogue for way too many different permutations of the game state, and you know what? It's not even interesting. It took so much work, and not even the explanation is interesting. One of the craziest things we've learned from working on games for the first time is just how much hard work goes into stuff that a player is not only not going to notice, but isn't even supposed to notice. Nobody plays a game and thinks, wow, the collision detection on this barrel is so good. It doesn't even register as a creative choice. But it is a creative choice. Anyway, that map design I was talking about earlier. Having more visual assets doesn't just mean that the map design looks prettier. It lets us design spaces around landmarks. Little by little, we can put more intent and design into the joy of exploration and even the quest structure. But what's had a much more fundamental impact on our level design is the decision that our game no longer needs to be seamless. See, we originally planned for there to be as few transitions as possible. You know in A Link to the Past when you walk to the edge of a zone and you get like a little transition into the next zone? Or like in any video game ever when you enter a building and you get warped to an all-new indoors map? We didn't even want that. We were drawing the interiors and exteriors of buildings to be completely one-to-one so that we could just remove the upper layer when you walked inside. Ultimately though, we were putting in way too much work for just a little extra immersion. And honestly, from a gameplay perspective, these distinct points of transition are kind of landmarks in their own right. In practice, it helps keep the player oriented in our world. And part of the reason we came up with that seamless philosophy in the first place was to facilitate a particular mechanic. Originally, you were going to be able to project your spirit form and walk through walls and stuff. Some of our character design concepts are even featuring this spiritual theme. But at the end of the day, it didn't really mesh with our other design elements. It had very little interplay with the other things you do in the game, and it felt a bit too fantastical when you consider the modern-day witch subculture inspiration of our game. Modern-day witches are a lot more about mindfulness and manifesting energy through ritual than, you know, casting a level 20 firebolt. Well, that pretty much sums up Demo 2. It's been a pretty hectic period of learning as we go, but we have learned a lot, especially about the shape our game is taking. When a variety of different people with different skills work on one big thing greater than themselves, nobody can really perceive that thing they're making until it's put together in a cohesive way. So we're all kind of discovering it together right now. We're getting to know it, getting to know what it's good at, where it could improve, and what we ultimately want to do with it. But the other thing we're learning about is what we're capable of. Our HipWitch is still just a baby, but it's kinda looking like a game. It's gamey enough to show off to our friends and family and members of our Discord. Even with so much path still ahead of us, I can't help but feel pretty proud of what we've done. Only problem is, that path is kind of rapidly shrinking. We had to delay the completion of Demo 2 multiple times, leaving us with only 1 month of iteration remaining after that demo. That's not a lot of time to react to the things we learned in it. So the project is certainly a bit daunting in that respect. But at the same time, we're currently living the future that our teenage selves dreamed of. So, heck yeah to us. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. See ya.